All right, 13.1a, guys. This is being slow, I can tell. All right. So today we're going to spend a lot of time talking about major aspects of the Cold War. See, in the early 1960s, this is when we reached the height of the tensions in the Cold War, like so much so that we are on the brink of actual physical war. Right, so you guys will look at the Bay of Pigs on your own. You will also look at the Gulf of Tonkin on your own. But you will listen. I'm going to introduce the beginnings, the basics of this. All right, so under President Eisenhower, right, we get a lot of things dealing with the Cold War. The Cold War has been going on since the end of World War II and won't end until 1991. All right, so there was tensions there on that turned to brinkmanship. This means that it was like as close, they were pushing the limits, right? But in 1960, this is where the superpowers actually look like they might fight. All right, after Joseph Stalin, we get Nikita Khrushchev. He becomes the Soviet premier, and in late Eisenhower years, communism had spread to Western Hemisphere. We talked about Cuba falling to communism and how that freaked us out because it's only 90 miles from Florida. All right, so that is something to keep in mind. Khrushchev is going to be the leader at the height of the Cold War in the Soviet Union. He serves from 1958 to 1964. And something interesting is that he is going to be different and kind of the same as Joseph Stalin. So one of the things he criticized Joseph Stalin for is he criticized him for arresting and deporting opponents, right? Kind of elevating himself above everyone. And so he creates this phrase called de-Stalinization in the Soviet Union, where he is basically making the Soviet society less repressive. Now, this is not always true. Like, for example, he crushed a revolt in Hungary very violently. But overall, he did try to be peaceful. He tried to coexist with other capitalist countries, even though he 100% believed in communism. So, unlike Stalin, he actually visited the United States as well. So, relations seem to be going well at the beginning. But things go downhill when the Soviets shoot down an American U-2 spy plane deep inside their territory in the 1960s. All right, so once this happens, trust is broken. So, following that year, that is when Khrushchev is going to approve of the construction of the Berlin Wall, which basically alienates East Germany. It's going to stop East Germans from fleeing to the capitalist West Germany. All right, so it's just keeping them from leaving the communist area in Germany. All right, so this turns to a lot of resentment. The United States is not going to trust Khrushchev anymore. Not that we actually didn't to begin with, but this reaches some tensions. And we definitely reach the high point of our tensions when we find missiles in Cuba that Khrushchev has placed there. All right, and this relationship with Castro and Khrushchev is going to grow, and you guys are going to learn today on how we made it grow. All right, so that's pretty interesting, but the threat to communism is closer than ever in Cuba. All right, and so we don't really talk a lot about how Castro came into power, but him and his brother Fidel and Raul Castro attempted to overthrow the Batista government in 1953. They failed, but reattempted. After being exiled in 1956, they came back with a group of guerrilla soldiers. They were successful. Fidel then names himself president for life, right? And something that Fidel does, he completely changes the business, because under the Batista government, they had good relationships with the United States because Batista was kind of corrupt and he would do anything that would give him bribes. All right, and so this was very important to the U.S. because once Fidel became president for life, he alienated the United States businesses as well as the wealthy Cuban citizens. And there were a lot of Cuban citizens that were associated with American business as well. So he didn't really like that. So, right, Cuba had been an object of American attention since the Spanish-American War. There was a lot of people that would travel here, like as vacation, because it was only 90 miles from Florida. And once Castro becomes president, he does change the aspect, and that relationship continues to change. All right, like about 10% of Cuba's population fled the country to escape persecution. Many escaped to Florida. This is after the reign of Castro, once he began to be president, right? So a lot of people, not everyone was in support, but a lot of people did support him because they didn't like the Bautista government. They saw it as corrupt. So he is going to begin to redistribute land, nationalize foreign businesses, and seize their own businesses from American people. And so in 1960, President Eisenhower authorized the CIA to begin secretly training Cuban exiles for a potential overthrow of Castro. This began even before Kennedy, but when Kennedy steps in, this ultimately falls onto his lap. He has to deal with this foreign policy. And again, you guys are going to look at this independently, but I did want to set the stage. All right, so he had been critical, like JFK had been very critical of what Eisenhower had done, allowing communism to take root so close to America. So he is going to hit this hard, but the Bay of Pigs is going to be the first altercation, and you guys are going to learn more about it as we go on, as well as the Cuban Missile Crisis. All right.